You are not imagining it. That is the first thing I want you to hear. Because the most insidious thing a toxic coworker does is make you question your own perception. They act just professionally enough in the right rooms that you start wondering if you're being too sensitive, if you're reading too much into it. If the problem is somehow you, it isn't. What's happening is real, the pattern is real, the damage is real. And the reason nothing has changed is not because you haven't tried, it's because everything you've been told to do has been aimed at the wrong target. You've been trying to fix a relationship problem. This is not a relationship problem, this is a threat assessment problem, and threat assessment has a completely different set of rules. My name is Zara, and today I'm giving you the rules they never printed. Picture someone. They joined the team 14 months ago, solid, prepared. The kind of person who reads the brief before the meeting, who asks the question no one else thought to ask, who delivers cleanly without making noise about it. And for a while, that was enough. Then something shifted. Subtle at first, a comment in a group setting that landed slightly wrong framed as a joke, plausibly deniable. A project they clearly contributed to that somehow got summarized in a meeting without their name attached, an email chain they were quietly removed from. A conversation with their manager that felt slightly cooler than usual, and they couldn't trace it back to anything specific they'd done, so they did what reasonable people do. They worked harder. They stayed more professional. They kept their heads down and trusted that the results would correct whatever story was being told about them in the rooms they weren't in. The attacks got more precise, not louder. More precise. The question they're left carrying is, what am I supposed to do with someone I can't even prove is doing anything? That is still the wrong question. The right one is, what is the actual objective of this person's behavior, and what changes when you stop responding to it like a personal conflict and start responding to it like a strategic problem? There are 4 things happening when a toxic coworker operates against you. Understanding all 4 is what separates people who survive this from people who get quietly worn down and eventually leave. Mechanism number 1. The narrative war and you're not showing up to fight it? A toxic coworker's primary weapon is not what they do to you directly. It is what they say about you in the conversations you are not part of. The comment before the meeting starts, the hesitation when your name comes up in a planning discussion, the framing of your work that happens just outside your line of sight. This is a narrative war, and narrative wars are not won through performance, they are won through presence, through repetition. Through who gets to define the story before anyone else does. The mechanism is straightforward. Your manager and colleagues are building their picture of you from fragments. Every interaction is a data point. When someone with consistent access to those conversations is quietly introducing doubt about your judgment, your reliability, your team fit, those fragments accumulate into a story. And if you are not actively building a counter-narrative, the story being built for you is the only one that exists. Silence in a narrative war is not professionalism. It is surrender. Mechanism number 2. Plausible deniability as a system. Effective toxic behavior almost never crosses a line that can be formally reported. That is not an accident. It is a design feature. The comment is framed as a question. The credit theft is framed as a misunderstanding. The undermining is framed as concern. Every act is calibrated to stay just inside the boundary of what could be disputed, close enough to land damage, ambiguous enough to escape consequence. This is why the standard advice fails. Document everything assumes there is something documentable. Talk to HR assumes there is a clear violation. Confront them directly assumes they will respond to a direct conversation honestly. None of these assumptions hold when the behavior is specifically engineered to resist them. The mechanism that protects a toxic coworker is not that no one can see what they're doing. It is that what they're doing has been constructed to be unprovable. And in a system that requires proof before action, unprovable behavior operates freely. The sophistication of their tactics is the protection. They are not reckless, they are precise. Mechanism number 3. Emotional provocation as a strategy. This is the mechanism that converts a toxic coworker from an irritant into a career threat. Their secondary objective after narrative control is to provoke a visible reaction from you, an emotional email, a frustrated outburst in a meeting, a moment where you look unstable, difficult, or unprofessional. Because the moment that happens, the story they've been building about you gets confirmed in front of witnesses. The mechanism works because stress degrades judgment. When you're operating under sustained pressure, watching credit disappear, feeling your reputation erode, losing sleep over something you can't even fully prove, your threshold for visible reaction drops. Small provocations land harder. You snap at something you would have absorbed 6 months ago. And that snap becomes the story. They didn't need to do anything dramatic. They just needed to apply consistent low-grade pressure until you handed them the evidence. They are not trying to defeat you in a fair fight. They are waiting for you to defeat yourself. Mechanism number 4. The isolation function. The final mechanism is the one that completes the trap. A toxic coworker who is operating strategically understands that your strongest protection is your network, the colleagues, cross-functional contacts, and allies who hold their own independent picture of your competence and character. So the behavior targets your relationships, subtle wedges, small misrepresentations that make you seem difficult to work with, situations engineered to make you appear unreliable to the people whose opinion matters most. The goal is to narrow your world down to just them and your direct manager, a context they have already been working to control. Because you are isolated, you are easier to define and easier to displace. They are not just attacking your reputation, they are dismantling your defenses one relationship at a time. Here is what makes this worse over time. The longer this runs unaddressed, the more it compounds. Every week of unchallenged narrative is another week of sediment building in the wrong direction. Every provocation that gets a visible reaction is another data point in the story. Every relationship that quietly cools is a defense that quietly disappears. And there is a threshold, a point that is different for everyone, but arrives for everyone, where the accumulated damage becomes harder to reverse than it would have been to prevent. Where the story about you has been told so many times to so many people that correcting it requires more social capital than you currently have. Most people don't recognize that threshold until they've already crossed it, because the decline is gradual, because each individual moment seems manageable, because they keep believing that the next piece of good work will correct the narrative, not understanding that the narrative and the work are running on separate tracks, and performance alone cannot fix a perception problem. This also changes you, not immediately, but consistently. The sustained vigilance of operating in a hostile environment degrades clarity, depletes focus, and contracts the part of you that takes risks and thinks openly. You become smaller, not from failure. From the energy cost of continuous defense. By the time most people decide to act, they have already paid the price of waiting. Stop thinking of this as a conflict to resolve. Start thinking of it as an environment to navigate. Conflicts have two willing parties who both want resolution. This is not that. This is a situation where one party is benefiting from the current dynamic and has no incentive to change it. Treating it like a resolvable conflict means continuing to use tools designed for a problem that doesn't exist here. The tools for navigating a hostile environment are different. Here they are. Move number 1, build a paper trail not for HR but for reality. After every meeting where decisions are made or work is discussed, send a brief follow-up email. Not accusatory, not defensive, just clear. Following up on today's conversation, here are the action items and who owns each one. Copy the relevant people. Do this consistently, not reactively. What you are building is a contemporaneous record, a layer of documented reality that is very difficult to rewrite later. When credit disappears or a version of events gets disputed, your record exists. Quiet, dated, factual. Move number 2. Expand your visibility immediately and deliberately. Identify 2 people outside your immediate team whose opinion carries weight in decisions that affect your career. Find a legitimate reason to collaborate, contribute, or connect with them this week. A question about a cross-functional challenge, an offer to help with something at the edge of your role, a thoughtful observation in a meeting that extends beyond your lane. You are not lobbying. You are ensuring that the picture of you held by decision-makers is built from direct experience, not from a filtered version someone else constructed. The toxic coworker's narrative only fills the vacuum. Fill the vacuum first. Move number 3. Refuse the provocation with visible calm, not invisible suffering. The next time they do the thing, whatever the thing is, your response is the same. Measured, professional, unhurried. Not because you're suppressing your reaction, but because you've decided in advance that they do not get the reaction. Practice it before the moment arrives. Rehearse your tone, your body language, your follow-up sentence, and then critically stay in the room. Don't retreat. The instinct is to pull back from the person who's making your professional life difficult, but retreat cedes ground. Stay present, stay professional, and make them work harder for every inch. You are not managing your emotions. You are controlling the narrative of who you are under pressure. There is something harder underneath all of this that deserves to be said. When someone's behavior gets to you, really gets to you, in the way that keeps you up at 3 a.m. rehearsing conversations, in the way that follows you home and sits at the dinner table, it is rarely only about them. Usually it is because they found something, an existing uncertainty about your worth, a quiet fear that you haven't fully earned your place. A wound that was there before they arrived and that they have now learned to press with precision. They didn't create that wound. They are simply exploiting it. And the most durable protection against what they're doing is not just tactical. It is knowing with clarity, from evidence, without needing anyone's confirmation exactly what you bring and what you are worth, not confidence as a performance. Clarity as a foundation. When that clarity is solid, a toxic coworker becomes a problem to manage, not a threat to survive. The tactics still matter, but they stop landing in the same place. The person who cannot be destabilized is very difficult to destroy. That is where this ends, and that is where your work begins. I'm Zara. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.